All right, going to be doing another mock draft video. This is actually not in this. Well, we'll have some mock draft going on, but this is going to be a drafting by data, drafting by numbers type of discussion. Talking about some modeling and how you can use data analytics to help guide you, or be essentially a cheat sheet of how to, at least if you're stuck, you don't know what to do, it could guide you, give you some type of framework when you're drafting. Now, it's not perfect, obviously, because every team's different, every year's different, needs change, obviously, dramatically within days sometimes of what you need to draft for the upcoming season. So it doesn't always work, but we're going to try to test it out. We're going to see if we can follow the rules that we're going to create and see what we can get. Yes, obviously, we would throw a little bit of a filter on there for what the Patriots need, and that's going to be part of the conversation anyway. But I used 4 models to come up essentially with a final grading system, a value system, position value system, to help you determine when you should be trying to draft certain players. Almost like a hierarchy, right? So the first model I came up with, which is calling it position impact percentage ranking. And it's it's basically ranking the positions on their ability to impact the game both positively and negatively, right? So you can have positive impact plays, negative, and the percentage of impacts. So how likely is their play going to determine the outcome of the game, and how big. So magnitude and quantity. So that would be the quarterback would be number 1 there, for example. Now, if a quarterback plays very well, typically you win the game. If the quarterback plays bad, the quarterback is causing you to lose, right? And you can have neutral as well, where in that case you kind of go down to the next level, right? Go down to the next level. But so quarterback being number 1, and if your quarterback's not playing well, you should be thinking about moving on from them, doing something about it, drafting, trading, free agency, something. So that's it. So let's go down to these lists for this model. That's spit out as the quarterback being number 1. Number 2, being the right edge player. Why? Well, because if you're going to impact the number 1, the best way to impact the play of the number 1, which would be quarterback, is the right edge player. Because typically you got right-handed throwers, so the blind side's coming off the right side of the defense. So the right edge player, the blind side, right? The left side of the offensive line. Obviously impacts the quarterback and also contributes to both the run game, pressures. If that player is doing very well, getting to the quarterback, doing sacks, doing well in the run defense, your team's most likely to do very well because the quarterback's being pressured, got to throw the ball away, interceptions, getting sacked, etc. Now, if he's doing bad, not getting pressures, also committing penalties, not good. Not going to win the game probably, because that means the quarterback has a lot of time to throw the ball, or you're committing, roughing the passer penalties, which keeps drives alive and most likely ends in a score of some manner. Now, obviously, if the right edge player is your second most important, the third most important, according is left tackle. The guy who's matching up against that right edge. So there you go. Number 4 is your CB1, your primary cover corner. Makes sense because he's the guy in between the quarterback and your primary wide receiver 1. Now the wide receiver 1 is number 5. Obviously that makes sense, right? That's the target. It doesn't have to be the wide receiver 1, right? So it's interesting that the corner is playing against both the quarterback and the wide receiver. That's typically why, right? Whereas the wide receiver is essentially just trying to get the ball and is more reliant on the quarterback. So that's why wide receivers, in terms of hierarchy, in terms of impact percentage, is lower than several other players. There's a few other positions. Now, that's number 5. Number 6, interesting enough, number 6 through 13 are almost percentage of impact plays in a game. Are almost the same. So it's between 6 and 14. 6 through 14, Very little difference. Not even a quarter percent between some of them. Okay, so they're almost all the same. That is going to be number 6 is D tackle. Number 7 is running back. Number 8 is your left edge defender. Number 9 is middle linebacker. Number 10 is tight end. Number 11 is going to be a free safety. 12 is going to be your will linebacker. I also clumped in Rover there as well. Number 13 is your right tackle, and number 14 is your second quarterback, CB2. Those guys are so between D tackle at 6 and CB2 at 14. They're very similar. Very very little difference between them. After that is number 15 is your right guard. Number 16, all the way at 16, is your second wide receiver 2. Number 17 is your center. Number 18 is your strong safety. Number 19, Sambacker, strong linebacker. 20 is your left guard, which makes sense because he's being shared with your center usually. 21 is your nose tackle. 22 is your wide receiver 3 or your slot receiver. Number 23 is kicker. 24 is your punter. And number 25 is your kick return specialist, or just your return specialist. Now, when I think about it and I'm looking at the data, like, yeah, there's some bias in there, whereas, like, hey, like, yeah, your wide receiver 3 is probably not going to have all these huge impact plays. Like, your wide receiver 3 does not actually have to catch the ball and create a lot of touchdowns for you to win. Whereas your wide receiver 1 typically does, because they're the ones, big chunk plays, big impact plays. If they're playing well, like, if there's a strong correlation. If your wide receiver 1's having a great game, chances are you're probably winning, right? Because your guy's able to beat out their best corner. So chances are your team's gonna win. They're gonna have a big comp. Whereas you can have your slot guy can have a lot of yards and not win. I mean, Jamario Douglas is our best receiver this year, and we're not winning. So there's a great example. That doesn't mean we have to devalue the wide receiver 3. But it also just shows you how important having your top level, having a true wide receiver 1. Also important how it is to have a good edge rusher. Obviously, having a premier quarterback is really important, right? Because if those guys are not playing well, you are going to lose. And if we think about it right now, we don't have our quarterback's not playing well. We lost our primary edge rusher, and Uche's been injured for a lot. Jennings is doing his best, but I mean, he's a jack linebacker, really. He's doing all right. Keon White's doing all right here and there. Wise has kind of been absent on the stat line. So we're not getting a lot of production out of the edge. Very little. I mean, this last week, I think, was our best sack game, I think, this year, in terms of sacks and pressures, and we still lost because our quarterback's play was so bad. But left tackle, Trent Brown's in there. We're looking okay, not bad. All of a sudden, it's a mess when he's not. Corners, we lost Gonzo. We lost our primary corner. Basically, it's been all downhill since then. I mean, yeah, the Cowboys game was ugly, but that was because Mac Jones was throwing interceptions and fumbles and everything left and right. His play outproduced, and he obviously then Gonzo was out for majority of that game anyway because of injury. So you see how this actually does make sense. This is not stats from the Patriots. This is league-wide 10 years for all this data. Now, moving on to the next model is position value model. This is considering the players' contracts and the cost per snap. Why would we want to draft these guys high? Well, because you want to get as many expensive positions on rookie contracts because they're cheap. So you can get good play out of cheap contracts. Veterans, you don't want to end up paying them too much because they're typically not that much better, and because they're getting sucked up by new contracts and setting the new the bar for what is free agent signings. You don't want to get sucked up into that. You want to get as many great players on rookie contracts as possible to manage the expenses and allow you to cherry pick who you're really actually willing to overpay for, right? You gotta unlock that. And the only way to do that is to get some of these expensive positions on rookie contracts. They're not that much dissimilar from the previous model. First one being quarterback, being very expensive, then wide receiver, then edge, then left tackle, quarterback, cornerback. Right and D tackle are about the same at 6. 7 safety, 8 linebacker, tight end, guard, slot wide receiver at 11, running back at 12, center, kicker, punter, and then kick returner. So not too far off. There's a little bit moving around there, but about the same. Now the last two. This first one though is very interesting. This is I'm putting it as playoff position correlation rankings, and it's essentially looking at the positions. When you have a top 5, I took top 5 players each year for 10 years, and then looked at the playoff teams. What percentage of playoff teams had a top 5 player, right, at these positions, and which is the number one? Which one had the most percentage-wise? And it was quarterback, obviously. So if you have a really good quarterback, you're probably going to be in the playoffs. So 58% of playoff teams. Well, I'm only doing the top 5. So there's more playoff teams, and there's only 5. So basically, almost all your top 5 quarterbacks are going to be in the playoffs. And that's just based upon yards and touchdowns and everything. Like, it's not just like observational, like who looks good, because like Joe Burrow is not going to make it to the playoffs this year. They're not going to make it to the playoffs. Joe Burrow is arguably one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the whole league, right? So now he's not going to be it this year. But point being is, if you have a good quarterback and good quarterback play, which hinges on offensive line and wide receivers as well. But point being is, if you have a good quarterback, you're probably and he's playing well, you're going to be in the playoffs. Now the next one's quite interesting, but you have to think about it. It does make sense. It's the tight end. I have 52% of the time. 52% of playoff teams have a top 5 tight end since 2010. Now Goddard's okay. Mark Andrews, I know he's injured now, but he's been one of the best tight ends. Top 3, top 5. Kittle being one of the best. Obviously Kelsey being one of the best. He's good. Laporta's been good. I don't want to say he's top 5, but he's been good, especially as a rookie. These guys might be the exception this year. Browns are okay. These guys have good one by committee. Statistically, Hackinson is, he's, I think, one of the best, if not the best, in terms of yardage at least this year. But you got Pitts, he's good. Schultz is good. So, I mean, the top half of the league basically has the really good tight ends. Bottom half of the league, not so much. Now, Hunter Henry is not having a good year. So, I mean, skills-wise, like these guys have, they have 2 good tight ends as well. They don't really have one. No, Knox is okay, but Kincaid's showing up. Not really. Kraft has had a decent year. Taysom Hill actually is good, but he doesn't really play that much as a tight end anyway. But you see what I'm saying? Like, not too many good tight ends down here. There's some in there, don't get me wrong. Like, I think even the Panthers have a good, decent tight end. Cardinals have a good tight end as well, but it's not top 5. Where the top 5 are in the back. Top 5 are in here. So there makes that. Now after that, it drops down significantly to right tackle. That's around a third. Same thing with a guard. That's about a third. Now right guard. Now, interesting enough, you think, when you want left tackle would be the best, but it's the indicator that you have a top 5 tackle, right tackle. Now, yes, we want a good left tackle. How can you afford to have a good right tackle, having a good left tackle? So the indicator here is that the right tackle is really important to have a good team. You should have a good right tackle, because that means you're not going to have a good right tackle and have a bad left. That might impact the modeling a little bit, but it's a good discussion to have there. Right guard you definitely need to have, because the right guard might be the second most important position on the offensive line in many ways, because your right guard's taking on usually the more sturdier tackle, and is also one of the best primary blitz pickups, because the center is typically messing with the left guard, who is then playing with the left tackle. So the left side of the line is usually one unit, right? And they're kind of handing people off, trying to at least protect that blind side as best possible. So the left guard and the center are typically double teaming, and then the center's chipping, right? So it does make sense. Your right guard needs to be legit because they're doing one-on-ones and they're picking up. After that is a good corner, which is again around the third. That makes sense. Your best teams have good corners. I think that's held up. I think that's fair. And then interesting right after that's punter, but kind of makes sense. You got to have a guy who can flip the field. Having a bad punter is not good. You have to have a good punter. A third of your teams in the playoffs have a top 5 punter. Now for, let's see, 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 positions. Yeah, 5 positions. All of them at around a little bit under a quarter, but they're all the same value. It's dead on. Ready? Wide receiver, linebacker, safety, kicker, and running back. So, quick conversation on that. You're thinking, oh, how does the wide receiver have the same, have a better? Wouldn't you want to think that your best receivers are in the playoffs? And that's not necessarily true because now again we can go on like player ability, but in terms of stats, that's not always true because a wide receiver that's top wide receiver is probably by far the best receiver on a bad team. Right? I mean, we could talk about this year. Like Keenan Allen's gonna, I think, top number 1 maybe even. Right? Yeah. Chase. Who else is having a good year that's on a bad team? I mean, Justin Jefferson's been injured, but I mean, these guys are okay. Diggs is having a decent year. They're down this year. See what I'm saying? Like, you're statistically now Dolphins with Tyreek and then like AJ Brown. Those guys are top, but like, Zay Flowers having a good year. Odell Beckham Jr. not really. You know, they don't really. They're spreading it out. 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 I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is having a decent. Yeah, he might be another one that's a good example. But again, most of these teams like spreading it out. Most of these teams are spreading it out. They're not going to have. So their guys, although very good wide receivers, the stats are not going to show it. So they're not going to have a top 5 that year. And all you need is a few of them. Like, for example, like 1, 2, and like 3 will probably have a top 5 receiver, right? Or maybe multiple ones, but that's still not the majority of your playoffs. So not every single team has to have an amazing wide receiver to get into the playoffs. Interesting to note, though, you have to have good linebackers, you have to have good safeties, kickers, and running backs are just as important. Then you have left tackle, center, edge, and then way down the lines, your left guard, D tackles like the lowest, which is interesting. So there's that. That's another one done. So number 4. Now, this one's for about rookies, and it's a value to win ratio, meaning these are positions you want that when you draft them as a rookie, they're most likely to have a positive impact on your win-loss. So for example, the first one is a quarterback. If you draft a good quarterback, that quarterback can come in and typically have a positive impact on your team. Now that could be, again, there's a little hole in the idea there, which is, if you're drafting a good quarterback, you're probably a bad team. So if you draft a good one, right, and they come in, they're going to most likely have an impact because you played so bad last year. So that's going to have see what I'm saying? But the interesting ones is corner. So a corner can have a dramatic impact on your win-loss. A safety have a dramatic impact, and then also wide receiver. Those are your top 4. So those are things you're gonna, if you want to make a turnaround next year, these are good ways to do that. After that's linebacker. It's a solid drop off too. To linebacker, then edge, tackle, tight end, guard, D tackle, running back, center, punter, kicker, and kick returner. I think the hole in this one is probably the fact that, some of those positions I was just talking about, they're going to be at the top of the draft, and if they're really good talents, they can walk in there day one and have an impact that's outside of how bad the rest of the team is, and they're not being thrown to the wolves per se. Like tackle, if you're a good tackle, you're going in, but your rest of your offensive line's trash, you're probably not going to be able to show that you're helping out. But anyway, so let's bring that down. So let's talk about how we graded this out and essentially getting position values for each one. Ranking, we'll go through position ranking, and the position value. The number one rank for a draft would obviously be a quarterback, with the highest rank of being 1. 1 being lower is the better. So number 2 is going to be CB1, your primary corner. But that position value is a 4. So we go from 1 all the way down to a 4. Or all the way up to a 4, I guess. So 3, no, it'd be down, technically. Number 3, wide receiver 1. 4.5. So not far off from CB1. Number 4 is a right edge at 5.25. Number 5 is the left tackle at 5.5. Number 6 is your cornerback 2, second corner, at 6.5. After that is your left edge at 6.75. Number 8, free safety at 7. So think about this. Right now we're at number 8. Quarterback, wide receiver, and left tackle for the offense, corner, edge, and then corner again. And then edge again. So, and then free safety. So there's 1, 2, 3. In the top 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 out of the top 8 are defensive players. Now number 9 is a tie between tight end, right tackle, and wide receiver 2 at 7.25. Middle linebacker at 7.5 at number 10. Number 11's weak side linebacker at 8. 12 is D tackle, strong safety, and slot put together. They have a value of 8.75. Running back 9.25 at 13. That was number 14's right guard at 9.5. Your Sam backer is 9.75. Nose tackles a big drop down to 12.5. Center and left guard is 12.75. Kicker and punter is 14.5, and your kick returner is another drop down to 16.75. So, if you're to follow this, you basically never want to draft a kicker, a punter, a kick returner. What do you know? But seems like getting good defensive players early on in the draft is a good idea, unless you're going after something that influences your quarterback's ability to throw the ball by either being the quarterback, the primary wide receiver target, or the left tackle. And the next clump of offensive weapons are tight end, a right tackle, and wide receiver. Your wide receiver 2. Takes a while before you really get into getting a running back. But that has to do with value too. That's not just all about the player's ability to do it. It just comes down to using the draft. Because it's interesting enough. People need to separate the idea that, where you're being drafted is the market, right? Not necessarily the actual value of the player. It's the value of the player through a certain entity, right? Through the draft. That doesn't mean on the field, right? Because we can go back. Running back, it's not that in terms of impact players, they're pretty high up on the list, right? Correlation indicator of percentage of being in the playoffs if you're building a team. That one points to running back being just as important as wide receivers. But yet in the draft, it's not. And the value of their contracts are not. So they're great value picks because you don't have to get them high up in the draft. The value of their contract is low, but yet their correlation to winning is actually still pretty high. Impact plays and their value. Now, let's break that down a little bit more. Before we get started, I apologize for this long intro here. We're going almost half an hour. But if you were to kind of talk about the position ranking, offense, and the position value versus offense versus defense versus special teams, offense, the average position rank is a 9. The position value is a 7.79. That's the average. Now for defense, average is 9.36 for position rankings. Position value is a 7.7. Basically the same. Offense versus defense. So if you want to be like, oh, you should be drafting offensive players more than defense, it doesn't really matter. Basically right down the middle. They're all like right in the mean. No side is more important than the other. No side, left, right, doesn't matter. Offense versus defense, doesn't matter. Now, special teams, there's a big difference. Their average positional rank is 18 with a position grade value of 15.25. So, basically saying don't even bother drafting. And if you look at some teams, all they do with kickers and punters, and I mean, kick returners is a bad example, but because most people don't get one specifically, is just bring them in. There's an army of kickers and punters out there. Now, does it mean that you shouldn't draft them? No. I mean, if you find one that's really good that fits like what you need, like, and they're good, yeah, they're important. Because if we want to go back to positional percentage for correlation indicator for playoffs, your punter's 6 and your kicker's number 10. Punter's higher than your wide receiver. Good teams have good punters. Good teams have good kickers. Now, going back to the draft, you don't draft them. Doesn't mean you don't have them on your team. You just don't draft them. So what do? To pick one every once in a while. And that's what we do, at least. Thankfully. All right. Or you can be what other teams do. Just constantly trying to go find one. So let's test this out. Sorry for the long intro there. We're going to do no trades on the first one. And we're going to try to follow this rubric. Right? Talking about this. It's not ultra advanced. This is a very rudimentary way of doing it. Obviously, we can get a lot more complex. So we get a shot at Drake May. So number 1, right off the board. So the next ones are all pretty tight between corner, CB1, wide receiver 1, edge, and left tackle. Now, in terms of our needs, a wide receiver 1 is very important. An edge will be very important. And a tackle will be very important. I think the tackle would, if you ask me deep down inside, the tackle is probably a little bit more important than the others. Graham Barton, technically, I've been watching the first game I watched versus Clemson. It was obvious this guy knows how to play. He's been injured a little bit, but this guy can play. He's played left tackle. I think he can even play a little bit inside if he wanted to. I'm going to go with, I think this is no-brainer. I think that's obvious. So, there it is. Easy way, quarterback, tackle, left tackle. That leaves us possibly going after wide receiver, corner, or edge. What do we have to pick from? DJ James is good. He is good. I don't know if I want to be able to... Maybe we do go after DJ. Wouldn't be a bad pick. What else could we possibly do? Edge. Let's look for edge, our next potential edge. Do we have to overdraft edge? Why can't I find it? There it is. I'll go after Gabriel. I'm okay with going with this cluster here. These three, if I can get them around 100, I'll be good with that. So that moves us to wide receiver. I think I have to overdraft a wide receiver. Because I need to get I'm gonna have to get. Because at 140 I might have a shot at getting DeCorian. Right? Brendan Rice can be a wide receiver one. And Sturdivant's probably gonna go back. Let me just give me one moment here to kind of formulate what the heck. We can hold off on corners. Obviously, we don't definitely need one. We're basically doing after cornerback. Yeah, so we can go at 140. We can go after a corner. Because Chris Abrams, Max Melton, Brian Hayes, like these guys are solid, and maybe one of these guys is not him, but still sitting around. I'm good with that. Leaving a tight end potential. So now I'm lost again. What was it at? Edge, corner, so receiver, edge, corner, and then either probably another tackle or tight end, right tackle or tight end, or even another wide receiver possibly, or safety. Right? Yeah, so deep safety. Yeah, more likely, yeah, safety if possible. Possibly a tight end or tackle, wide receiver. Crazy enough, maybe even another down edge player. Yeah. Wow. No room for running back, I guess. So let's go. Taking Brendan Rice, according to them, way overdrafting Brendan Rice, which I think he'll be maybe a top 50. I think where we just picked him might be. We might be picking Brendan Rice. I wouldn't mind that. What was my next one? I forget what it is. This is the edge one, right? Got this. Edge. Still some decent names on there. Gabriel Murphy, love that guy. Plays all over UCLA's defense. Still produces with Leatu even on there. Alright, so now we're on to... I forget already. Oh, actually, this one we might have to think about a little more, I think. Another wide receiver, possibly. Tight end. Dallin Holker wouldn't be a bad pick. Jalen Simpson would be a good pickup for safety. Let's take a look at what we got in the 180s here. Oh, we might be able to pick up that other tackle. If not, we can pick up a corner. Okay. So we hold off on getting another tackle. We might have to go with tight end here or the safety. Cole Bishop I can pick up as a safety too. He's good. I don't know why. And Malachi Moore would be a good pickup as well. Let's do evaluation of offensive tackles. Some good tackles left. What year is he? Okay. Oh, he's a big boy. Right tackle. I might have to watch him a little bit more. I think we'll go. Yeah, I think we'll go with Dylan Lobe probably. Because then at least we're getting a running back, which is a need, but also technically, I mean, he plays. I think he was like 11% of his snaps were at wideout. Not showing yet. This one doesn't show as much as you would like because he's a running back, but the percentage of the snaps that are his receiving yards, a good like again, I think it's 11% of the snaps were actually in wide out, split slot or wide. So I'm gonna actually cheat my system a little bit and get Lobe. That will allow me to get either safety or another tackle, depending on what we have here. Tight end would also be good. We have one more. Yeah, we have one more. This is the 6th round, so we'd have one more. We can kind of. Jordan Birch, I would probably want to take here as well. Cam Ward's returning, apparently. I can't find a good Cole Bishop I can be happy with. Yeah, I think I have to address the safety situation. I'm gonna have to go Cole Bishop. Here we go. I mean, we could have got another tight end, could have got another right tackle. Didn't pick up any corners, which would be a failure probably. But that's okay. But here's the thing, like that was mostly following the rubric, right? Following this guidelines that we've come by, using these gradings, and that's obviously with the filter what the Patriots do need, but it wasn't that far off. I mean, there's some other, we could have prioritized tight end a little bit more, but we could have picked up tight ends there. It's probably more important to pick up. Yeah, it's probably for us, for the Patriots. It's more important probably to pick up a quarterback, obviously a tackle, wide receiver. Okay, Now, yeah, it sucks that we had to go to the third round to get a wide receiver, but that's just the way that the board was falling. That's what we're gonna do. We're following the rubric here. And I think this, I mean, who knows if this is what could actually happen, but this is not bad at all, in my opinion. It's a good draft. And we probably in the 6th, 7th round, you can go after, there's a few tight ends in there. There's a few tackles still left that I would go after. There's corners would probably still be in play. Plenty of D tackles would probably be in there. Middle linebacker or two. A lot of guys I'm just staring at that, you know, are going to probably go UDFA. If you needed to get another wide receiver in there, there was definitely Hayden Hatton, I know, was still in there. Yeah, just a lot of guys you got to keep an eye on that you can probably pick up late in the 7th round in UDFA. So anyway, I think it worked. Let me know what you guys think. I'll probably try to spend another video. This one's getting long, and just by explaining it to get how I broke this down and maybe some of the, maybe not all the information. I think I got to hold on to some of that, but you know, the basic formula constructions, you know, scraping information, inputting it, and how to do that. We can do that sometime, but this is gonna be interesting to follow as we do more and more mock drafts, and then stacking it up with, you know, needs, and then just watching the players. I mean, like, I like all these players. Thankfully, they were there, and that's why I picked them specifically. But if I could have, you know, blocked this all off, if we just look at this column, that's what I was primarily going through, right? The only one that's a little hazy is the halfback. But again, a good percentage of his snaps were actually split out. He wasn't in the backfield. He was as a receiver. And the Patriots also do need a halfback. So it was a little bit of a deviation, but I can justify it. And at that point, it was also one of the best available players. So let's just go with that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.